I would like to introduce the moderator for the second session, MDL Mythbusting. Jordan Barris, Head of Public Sector at Secure, will moderate it.
All right, good morning. First step was to make it up the stage without tripping. With that, I'd like to invite my panelists to come on stage. And while I do that, I definitely want to thank Stephen, Laura, Darlene, and Charmaine for their work in putting together today's event. When they asked me to moderate a session around myth busting and MDLs, I said, okay, time to get spicy. Let's have a little fun with it. And so today, just open it up and set the stage, right? We're looking at, mobile driver's licenses, and how they're evolving, how they're gaining momentum today, right? Along with that evolution comes basically the uptake, if you will, in misunderstandings, misconceptions surrounding them and their usage. The question that people will ask are they a universal credential? Are they a surveillance tool? Are they just a fad? This candid and no holds barred panel today gives us the opportunity to cut through the noise and really challenge everyone's assumptions and really the things that dominate the headlines related to MDLs. From looking at both the inflated expectations to misplaced fears, our panelists are going to have the opportunity to engage in a truth-first dialogue on what MDLs can realistically achieve, what they absolutely cannot achieve, and why the future of digital identity hinges on getting this right. Whether you're a skeptic, a champion, or still figuring out where you land, this session will sharpen your understanding and provoke your thinking about what's at stake with MDLs as they move from pilot really to production. And so with that, I'm going to ask my panelists to introduce themselves. I do have one virtual panelist, so I'll actually start off with you. Lafi, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Certainly. Thank you. I'm Lafi Jordan. I, like Mike in the previous panel, also work for the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. My official title is Business Solutions Architect, but I work on all kinds of things related to identity, including the mobile driver license. I've been involved since the very, very early days of mobile driver license. And for my sin, I'm the convener of the ISO group that produced the 18013.5 and 18013.7 standards. So that's my background, MDL related in a nutshell. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Tammy, over to you.
Good morning, Tammy Pop. I'm VP for Growth for the IDEMIA Civil Identity business. Prior to coming to IDEMIA, I worked for the Pennsylvania DMV for 25 years and was in some of the very beginning conversations regarding mobile driver's license.
All right, Christine.
Hi, I'm Christina and I'm the field CTO for One Cosmos. Well, we are a full service credential service provider. And prior to that, I worked as a consultant for a lot of different federal agencies for over a decade.
I'm David Keltz. I'm here today representing Secure Technology Alliance that publishes mdlconnection.com, a resource for accepting mobile driver's licenses. I'm fortunate to have been able to work in this space full-time on mobile driver's license and digital identity for at least the last dozen years, including with Lafi on the ISO standards group and some of the other folks that I saw here. I was one of the lead authors with Ariane Gellick, who's here also here in the room, of the privacy annex, the privacy assessment that was done of ISO 18013.5. And looking forward to this session as Jordan has framed it today.
All right, fantastic. Now, I'm also going to ask my panelists to not be afraid of the mic. Feel free to pull it closer just so we can make sure that everyone in the audience can hear all your great remarks today. And so before you reject our reality and substitute your own, let's get into the conversation. Bonus points if you know where that is from. I do want to start with really what is the elephant in the room, and you did hear some of it discussed as part of the previous panel. And if you're looking at the venue that we have today, you probably could fit a few elephants in here. But generally, with MDLs now live in several states and accepted at different parts of TSA, why do so many people still think they don't exist or frankly don't matter? So with that, Tammy, I actually want to start with you.
one of the things I find interesting about mobile driver's license, I'm going to go back to Real ID a little bit. So, Real ID has been talked about for many years, what finally happened, right? So it became a thing. If you don't have one, you have trouble getting on a plane. We saw this huge influx of citizens show up. Everybody had to get the Real ID. Now, we've been talking about this for years. So this is not a new concept, right? But there became this huge fear around, oh my God, I'm not going to fly. I'm not going to move, move across the country, which is not true. I think MID is kind of like sitting in the same realm as Real ID. I think it's been talked about for multiple years now. I think there is potentially like a fear base of within like a certain age group that are afraid of it and they don't understand it. They don't understand how it's going to work. Back from the very beginning when MID was talked about, it was, a render of your credential on your phone. And that was very easy for people to understand, right? Because they saw this credential, they saw it on here, it made sense. But now I think there's confusion around you only have to give certain elements. I really don't understand how it looks, even though to us possibly in the room who do this every single day, we're like, oh no, it totally makes sense. So I think it's just getting people comfortable with the way it looks and understanding that there's technology behind it that's making it all happen. And it really is better than that rendering. It's safer, more secure than that rendering that was just on that credential.
And Christine, would love to get your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, so I have a couple of things on this one. One is on the TSA specifically on that use case. So I have a friend, shockingly, it's not me, I swear, who every time he has a mobile driver's license and every time he goes through TSA, he forces TSA to use the mobile driver's license. I would say probably that only works like 50% of the time. And I think he just ends up upsetting TSA more than anything else. I don't know why he keeps doing it. I know why. It's because he's stubborn. But the point is that there's just not enough education out there for the relying parties. And in this case, it's the TSA workforce. They attempt to do their job as efficiently as possible. And this is what I tell them all the time. You have a long list of people behind you who just want you to use your physical ID because it's so much faster in their mind than using the mobile driver's license today. So that's number one. I think the second, and now is that true or not? I'm not really going to say. I can tell you that I had attempted to use mobile driver's license every time I went through TSA, and I finally gave up for a variety of reasons. And one of them is because of the way that my mobile driver's license from my state was implemented. It actually wasn't the greatest implementation. So I'm waiting for them to update that. The second piece of this is really there's three pieces of the puzzle when it comes to adoption of mobile driver's licenses. One of them is the issuer. So in this case, it's the states because we don't have a nationwide ID. The second one is the holders. So that's us common folk who have those mobile driver's licenses in our phones. And the third one is the relying parties, and that's anyone from a government entity to my bank. And so we have to get everyone well educated on mobile driver's licenses, the use cases surrounding it, and what the ROI is for using them to be able to enable adoption. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And in fact, we need 3 different types of strategies to be able to go after all 3 of the pieces of that triangle to be able to get mobile driver's license adopted.
Fantastic. So Tammy, just to quickly circle back, I did hear you say that it's not necessarily true that MDLs are less secure. Is that correct? All right. Well, see, there you go. First myth that's been busted. With that, let's change gears a little
I
bit.
didn't realize we're on Mythbusters.
Oh.
I feel like I want like a really big warehouse and a lot of budget, and this is too low budget for me, George.
I mean, this is pretty big in terms of size, kind of like a warehouse, but I'm right with you. Budget next time, darling. We need to work on that. All right. So with that, some MDL implementations have raised eyebrows over their so-called phone home behavior. Are we taking these privacy concerns seriously enough, or just brushing them off as tinfoil hat paranoia? With that, I actually want to start with David.
Sure. Well, the answer is both. We are taking them really seriously. I mentioned that I worked on the privacy annex for this. I also have worked on Utah's mobile driver's license from 2019 to 23. I was in charge of the rollout of Utah's mobile driver's license. I'll say this is the third conspiracy theory that we've encountered around mobile driver's licenses. There are going to be people who don't want it to happen. That is why this is an option. In this case, this specific one has pulled together some really legitimate, legitimate end user concerns that have been captured and put into good documentation, including the privacy annex, and used it to try to say, guess what, we should be using a competing standard. So there's going to be reasons behind all of the conspiracy theories you have. The key thing about these conspiracy theories in general is they're going to try to make you outraged. They're going to try to pull on your heartstrings with something that seems plausibly true. In this case, it's less plausibly true than other conspiracy theories you heard. There are no issuers who are watching transactions. And that's what is sort of behind this no phone home. There are none. But if I sit here and tell you there are none, you're going to say, well, wait, well, maybe I should do research and find out. Okay, do that research and find out. Go to AMVA's privacy requirements in the MDL guidelines and read through them. Read through the privacy annex. Look at the ACLU's documentation about what things can happen, and then compare that to what you're seeing in actual rollouts. When you look at the reality here, we're all in this same boat, and we're trying to make an ecosystem work for everybody. The only way that ecosystem works is when people's privacy is respected and taken care of. It's the only way that there's going to be trust in this ecosystem, and we all need the trust from all of our angles in the ecosystem. So in this one, I think the myth is busted, but the myth will continue forward. People will continue talking about this, and digging for facts and finding out what reality is going to be the key antidote to it.
All right, fantastic. Tammy, absolutely.
I think there's a fear base in anything, and the easiest way is to kind of relate it to something that people may use today. Example, last week I unfortunately had to buy a new truck. I didn't buy the truck, the husband bought the truck. But I did all that through DocuSign. I didn't even go to the dealer. Now, I did have to send a picture of my driver's license to my husband via text message so they knew who I was. So there's a prime example. I just signed my life away for thousands of dollars with all my information on it, but I had to send my husband a photo of my driver's license. So it's kind of taking the opportunity to show linkage to citizens that you will easily do this today. I think during COVID, I think I bought a piece of property via DocuSign, right? You're willing to do all these, but you're worried about this mobile driver's license when this information already has everything this information does here. So I think that's really the biggest piece, is just taking it from this huge thing and dumbing it down, so to speak. I couldn't think of a better word, but like kind of dumbing it down and just making it relatable to what they're doing today.
Fantastic. Lafayette, I want to get you in here. Is there anything you want to add to this point?
Yes, thank you. The AMVA, as a representative of the North American issuers of driver licenses, of mobile driver licenses, takes privacy very seriously. Our members have made it very clear that any solution that phones home to the issuer at transaction time is not an acceptable solution. Our members have also made it very clear that the device retrieval option that is specified in 18.13.5 is a privacy-preserving, secure, and interoperable solution that works well. And so elaborating on that a little bit more, there are two methods described in 18013.5. The one is device retrieval, the one I just referenced, and the other one is server retrieval, which is an optional feature, which the buzz around phone home is all about, because server retrieval does in fact contact the issuer at transaction time. And contrary to some allegations that have been made in social media, WG10, the ISO group that created 18013.5, takes privacy very seriously as well. And they've debated long and hard on these features, these mechanisms, trying to decide what to do with them, and eventually decided to include the server retrieval and a whole annex talking about privacy features and properties of these mechanisms to inform issuers. And I think one of the main reasons that they did that was they realized that this is a worldwide standard and cultural norms around privacy differ in different areas of the world. Nevertheless, based on some recent discussions, WG10 is in the process of moving the phone home mechanism to a separate project, project for issuer relying party interface. And 18013.5 in its second edition, which the group is working on, will not include at this point. The next draft, at least, will not include the server retrieval, the phone home mechanism. So again, standing back, privacy is taken very seriously by all the stakeholders that we're aware of, and so the phone home concern, I think, while very valid, I think is being addressed, and moving forward, I don't see this being a reason for concern.
Can I add something, Jordan?
Absolutely.
So I think to tie all of these answers together, because they are all 100% true, I think it all comes back to education. First off, conspiracy theories, there's always some sort of kernel of truth behind them, which is why they are very easy to start to blow up out of proportion, especially when it comes to technology, which is an area that a lot of people don't understand how the behind the scenes works. So education, not only to the end users, in this case, the holders of the MDL, but also to the issuers and the relying parties, so that they can assuage the fears of the MDL holders, is really important. I also think the other piece that's just hilarious when you think about it is that in many cases, Americans kind of don't care about privacy, because they regularly and always actually give away key details of themselves to big tech companies to get a fun thing, right? Oh, let me change the way my face looks on a Snapchat. That's giving away your biometric to whatever that third-party company is that's doing that for you. But they don't think of it that way. So we have to, but when it comes to government, privacy matters, right? And that's true. But what we need to do as an industry and as the government is work through ways to be able to dumb down, as Tammy said, what that back-end architecture looks like, to be able to explain to end users, this is okay. We promise we're not tracking you. But it's not an easy battle, but it's something that we absolutely can do, because it's something that I would argue that we're doing today when it comes to some of the wallet situations within the federal government.
See, she said Snapchat and filters, and I was just reminded I need to find the new one for the new Superman movie. No spoilers, please, because I do need to turn myself into Clark Kent after this.
I actually don't even have social media, so I don't even know if they have filters, but my assumption is they do.
All right, fantastic. So, as we keep moving forward, I think one of the things I'm looking at for the folks to talk about are biggest assumptions around mobile driver's licenses that you think that needs to be addressed publicly, right? And really, as we're addressing it, let's talk about dismantling it. And so, I'm also curious, as you do so, who do you think is responsible for letting it spread? With that, I'm going to kick it over to Tammy to start. I know, that's a big one.
Can you define what it is to help Tammy out?
Yes,
'Cause I think
absolutely.
she's
So
confused as I
just
am right now.
assumptions around mobile driver's licenses, how they're used, their construction, just in particular, what are the biggest assumptions that have come up, or misconceptions that have come along with them? It's okay to pass the mic.
Sorry. So I think in the last panel, a lot of them touched on this. You know, if I lose my license, or if I lose my phone, I'm hosed, or if I can't get into my phone and the battery's gone, I'm hosed. Like, there's a lot of it's all like what we're seeing when it comes to adoption of new technology is that there are naysayers out there, to David's point. It's an all or nothing. It has to be 100% or 110% implemented and accurate, or else I just can't do it. In reality, a lot of the technology that we have right now, especially surrounding mobile driver's licenses, we can get to that 80%, but we're still going to have to iterate on the 20% edge cases, and that's okay. And I think explaining to people, like, a mobile driver's license today might not be for everyone, because you might not be using them for the reasons why they're being used right now. Maybe people just don't go and take planes. That's okay. But as we use, for example, TSA as, I would call it, the pilot of MDLs, and using MDLs regularly and getting people to feel more comfortable with it, then we can use that information to go to the other use cases for MDLs and then continue to iterate on that. And I think that's the way that we should be approaching it. It's really the best way for adoption. I think talking about how PIV-CAC adoption happened in the federal government, in reality, it all happened because of one single breach, and then everyone was required to use it. So that's not a good answer. But going over and looking at how FIDO has helped with the adoption of passkeys, and constantly iterated on the messaging and going and talking to the end users to see what works and what doesn't, especially in the messaging piece and in the instructions piece. That's been very helpful in getting wide scale adoption of passkeys, to the point that I can go and talk to any like average person on the street and say, oh, I do stuff with passkeys, and they know in a high level what it is that I'm working on.
All right, fantastic. Lafi, I want to get you in on this as well. Tell me your thoughts.
Yeah. So in my mind, one of the big things that need to be understood is that as a relying party, the entity receiving an MDL from a holder, as the relying party, you do not have to trust the wallet or the app on which the MDL resides. So in fact, the 18013 protocol was intentionally designed for privacy reasons to make sure the relying party does not obtain information about the device or the wallet from which the MDL is being presented. The trust point for a relying party, the only thing a relying party has to trust is the public key that it uses to authenticate the MDL. And it has to trust that that public key comes from a trusted issuer. And the way we achieve that is using a trust list, such as the digital trust service that my colleague Mike talked about in the previous session. And so this idea that your only trust point is the public key of the issuer is true even in future when we have standardized requirements for on-device holder authentication. So with what do I mean with on-device holder authentication? Currently, when you share your credential over the internet, we have a standard for that, 18013.7. The relying party is still responsible for matching the person presenting the credential to the information in the credential. And so, as Ryan has mentioned in the previous session, the standards community is working very hard on the requirements for your MDL device to confirm the match between the person presenting and the credential at transaction time. And so the relying party will just get the information, say an age over 21 statement, and a statement ultimately under signature of the issuer that says, Mr. Relying Party, you can trust that the information you receive is being handed to you by the person being described by the information. So again, the trust point for the issuer, for the relying party remains the public key of the issuer. Thank you.
All right. And so, David, I want you to tell it to me straight. Are vendors overselling MDL capabilities? Or are agencies too eager to check the innovation box?
So no, in fact, I think we're underselling the
Mm.
capabilities here. I think if you look from a relying party perspective, there is tremendous value to be derived from the fact that you have a deterministic result. You have so many things that you're doing. If you rely on identity documents right now, almost every instance of that, you are executing a probability. Yep, this looks like a real license. Yeah, I think that person is that holder. So from the relying party perspective, having that deterministic, oh, guess what? This is 100% cryptographically, this came from the issuer. This data that I received, subset of data that I received is from the issuer. I think that has much more value than we're able to communicate right now. I think we haven't found the right stories. We haven't found the right messages that tell the relying party community how critical this is to reducing fraud, making this more accurate, speeding up transactions. We don't have a lot of mounted evidence yet, but that's about to change. During the course of the last year, so with, say, from February last year until February this past year, Secure Technology Alliance, we ran an MDL technology showcase. A year ago, there was just panel presentations. And then this year, we've got 14 real use cases that we learned a ton from, where companies have built out operating relying party use cases, essentially, right? Like I can open a bank account. I can have a machine vision kiosk at a stadium that knows to check identity. I can purchase alcohol online and have it delivered to my house. Granted, there are like policy issues also to be solved with these, but the value, the speed up, the definitive nature of that cryptographic proof of ID information, I think we're still underselling that. I think we have to find better ways to communicate it.
All right. So with that, I'm going to switch topics a little bit and go towards interoperability, right? Because we heard a lot of discussion on interoperability, heard a lot about standards. But clearly, when we're looking at Apple or Google, states, and vendors, many of them want control ultimately over MDLs. Who's building trust and who's just building walls? So whoever wants to be the spiciest first, I'll say, Christine, let's start with you.
I'm going to be spicy against you, believe it or not. So I actually believe that the vendor community, including big tech, so Google, Apple, are working very hard to not build walls and to create interoperability when it comes to digital identities, mobile driver's license, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that's really important when it comes to interoperability, which is something that Ryan said on the last panel, because he's super smart, is that we have a couple of different standards out there, W3C, ISO dash 5 and 7. And there's also one more that it's like GT, blah, blah, blah. So are we in a Betamax VHS phase or whatever it was? I don't remember. It was so long ago. Or are we going to keep all of these standards and moving forward and just make sure that we have a spaghetti interoperability to work with them? I can't really say for sure. I know that I get to have conversations with really, really smart people in the industry, and we all have our theories of what's going to happen. But if there is no interoperability and if the walls aren't down, we all recognize that adoption won't occur. And the thing is in talking to relying parties today, because my job is to talk to both the commercial relying parties and the government relying parties, what we're seeing is that there is a real hunger for these use cases for digital presentation of identity, be it mobile driver's license, a verifiable credential, that's set at an IL2 standard, whatever the case may be. But we see that there is a real need for this, both in-person presentation and also digitally. And luckily, what we see is that there are people way smarter than me who are working on the standards for those APIs. And I expect that to be released sometime in the next year. And that actually helps us with the ISO versus W3C versus whatever standard walls. So I think that we are moving towards, believe it or not, a harmony. And part of that is because the big tech companies are actually in the room talking to like the little vendor guys like me to make sure that we actually can work together moving forward.
David, do you agree?
So I want to talk about interoperability as we've phrased it here. I think we've proven that the standard, you can take the standard document, you can implement it, and then you can have something that will work with someone else who implemented the standards. And we've proven that. There's been years of interoperability events that have proven that out. But interoperability, when you are in the real world, it has a different flavor to it. When I take my mobile driver's license that has implemented only QR code and BLE, and I walk up to a point of sale device that accepts NFC, and the reason it's not going to function, right? Because that one doesn't have the optical camera. I think we're fortunate. I'll call out, I think we're fortunate that the European government is pushing Apple to open that channel. I think that's going to change the dynamics quite a bit in terms of interoperability. One of the, I mentioned earlier that we had the showcase event. This is one of the key complaints in reality, in the real world. I don't have interoperability. Interoperability means that people are trained as well and willing to accept it, and that you can walk up to a device and interact with that device. It means that policy exists in ways. One of the things we found out working on the Virginia liquor stores was that those liquor stores, Maryland as well, like they don't feel comfortable yet accepting it. If I do this, am I going to lose my license? Guidance hasn't been pushed from the policy point of view that says, yeah, guess what? You can, this is real. You can do this. Here's where you get the public key from, and this is how you accept it. So there's this evolution from the interoperability of the standard itself I'll say again, has been proven, and how this becomes widespread interoperable for people in the field. So I think we have these next steps ahead of us, and it's something we do together, really. We do it by educating relying parties and requesting that the state issuing authorities and the apps that come with them, that they implement full versions of the ISO standard. Another one from the event. I mentioned the online alcohol purchase, and people would walk up with theirs and they'd say, oh, I wanna try this out. Okay, so but that particular app had not yet implemented 18013.7 implementations, newer standard. But that means, right? So we need to keep pushing this, keep opening the opportunities, keep opening the aperture on what's been implemented so that we can get to true interoperability and true usability for people in the field.
Absolutely, Tammy.
One of my big concerns is state governments have very limited budgets. They have very limited amounts of money. They have to pick and choose what they need to do. If we put it on them to handle all the marketing, I think that's going to be the struggle because they may not have the funding to it. I think in some states, this maybe what you saw happen with Real ID, right? They didn't have that separate funding budget to be able to do the billboards, the TV, the podcasts, advertising. So I really think the marketing piece is extremely important. We need to figure out a way to help them because ultimately it's those states that are going to push this adoption and make it, make it happen. I think the other thing that's important, and I just didn't get a chance to say this prior, there's an investment for these states for mobile driver's license. It's a big investment. But I think one of the really cool things we're seeing come out of that investment is for many years within each state, multiple state agencies, multiple federal government agencies, they want to talk to each other, right? They want to communicate with each other, verify the person that's applying for a medical marijuana is really, who they say they are. Mobile driver's license really streamlines that. It really is a maybe cost-cutting initiative where all these, behind the scenes systems don't have to be talking to each other anymore. You have this mobile driver's license, you have this investment, and now you can utilize that for your Department of State transactions, for your Department of Health transactions, all those citizen touch type things.
So Tammy, I'm going to stay with you, and I'd be remiss, given that I work with Socure, an AI company that works on solving for identity fraud, if I didn't ask a fraud question. And so generally, we've heard as part of today's discussion, I've heard generally throughout, my conversations with many leaders, that MDLs will solve the fraud problem. Is that grounded in reality, or are we just outsourcing hope to a new piece of tech?
I think it's probably the closest grounded in reality we've seen for a long time. I think it has the best bones around it for it to solve it. You're never gonna, there's always gonna be a million zillion people out there smarter, right? Everyone's gonna try to be taking things on, to cut the, break the code or whatever they do. But I think it's way closer than it is on a physical.
Lafi, I know you had some thoughts when we were doing the prep call for this. Would you like to share them?
Yeah, sure. And following what Tammy said, fraud prevention is not a destination, it's a race. As the attack evolves, so must our defenses. And what we're seeing today is that counterfeited physical documents are often used for fraud. And I think that was mentioned in the previous session as well. MDLs will absolutely address this particular threat. Will other threats emerge as MDL becomes more ubiquitous? Yes. But in the meantime, the MDLs provide a higher level of confidence in the authenticity of a credential than is possible with a physical card. It does so in an explicit yes-no manner. Your authentication process spits out the yes or no, as opposed to a physical document where you might wonder if the security features are authentic. And that's in addition to the privacy and the security benefits that we have talked about. So in summary, we believe that the MDL is a new and very useful tool in the fraud race. Thanks.
Yeah, I think tool is the right answer for that. There is no one silver bullet when it comes to fraud, and there will never be one silver bullet when it comes to fraud. I have a really great example of this. We have a customer that uses our product. That's not the reason why it matters, but so every time they add additional ways to conduct fraud checks, the bad guys get really smart and then find what that next loophole is. And that's what's always going to happen. And that's what we're seeing in this customer. So having just one way to conduct a fraud check is never going to get us closer to, is this fraud or not? We have to have multiple signals from multiple different areas, sometimes also from multiple vendors, to make sure that that person more likely than not is who they say they are. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. Like, what sucks because we're moving into a digital age is that we have to have a layering of vendors to be able to determine whether that person is the person that you need to have interacting with your relying party. That's not something that we've had to deal with in the past. Usually we just had one thing, and for enterprise government, it's PIV, and we're good to go, right? We're good. It's not a big deal, but that's not how we're moving towards now. We have people who live all over the world, people in other countries, some of them are high-risk countries that need to interact with the US government for various reasons. So we can't just say, no, that IP address can't come into this app. We also can't say, well, they have a mobile dock, so they're probably okay. We don't know always. Like, for example, if you're in another country, you need to understand how that document has also been issued to the end user. So there's a lot of layered things that become very nuanced when it comes to, should I accept these things? Now, mobile documents are, excuse me, MDLs, they're absolutely fantastic, built on PKI. They have a public-private key pairing, and we can trust them. And when the trust network starts getting pushed into more reliant parties, we'll have a really good foundation. But we still need to add additional layers on top of that.
All right. And so we're at the part of the conversation where I go slightly rogue and just open it up to see if
I
there's
thought
any,
it already happened.
open it up to see if there's any questions from the audience. We do have some mic runners in the event. I see one in the back.
You're gonna have to really run. There's a
and
lot.
they're
They're
gonna-
all in the back.
I would say, yeah. Should have said Mike Sprinters. That's what I should have said.
Good morning. I'm Colin Inman from the Department of Treasury. This is a great panel. What I heard a lot today was about skepticism of MDLs. And I feel as though that is sort of systemic in terms of digital identity in the US, just sort of concerned about it in general. And I'm wondering, in other countries, they have this technology out there and it's embraced by those countries' citizens. So how can we overcome that? And who's the right party to communicate what digital identity is, how it protects the citizens? And is it the federal government that should be communicating this, state level, or perhaps both?
The communication question is a really good question because we have a really interesting dynamic in the United States. In my opinion, if the federal government is communicating it, I think you're going to have more skepticism, and the governments in general, if the state government is responsible for communicating, you're going to have more skepticism. I think we work together because the goals are all the same. The goals are to improve things, to make things work, to have an ecosystem where fraud can be reduced, where the issuers gain some benefit, where citizens have more control over their ID. So those are the goals, and we have to find the pathways to communicate together on these. So the communication question is an interesting one for me, and it is more of a dynamic of interest in the United States than in other countries. But I think we can also learn from what we see. We can learn from what's in Europe. We can learn about the standards coming together and how online and in person are starting to come together and be usable within the same standard sets. We can learn from what's caused adoption in other parts of the world, like much more quickly than we're seeing in the United States. What communications have done that? I certainly am willing to talk with people who would want to talk to the relying party side, because that's part of what I do through the work that I do with Secure Technology Alliance.
So I think the easiest way to adoption within the US is through the digital, for lack of a better word, SIN relying parties. So there are three big buckets. I'm not going to name them. We all know what they are, that have to have identity. We have to have age verification before we can get into those websites and purchase or do whatever we're doing in those websites. So what's the best way to get adoption, to get people to feel a little more comfortable to use MDLs? Well, we target those and we say, hey, why don't you start using MDLs? And the reason why is exactly what has already been stated. They have the highest level of privacy preserving when it comes to all the different technologies out there. We have the mechanisms in place to preserve the privacy and to only send out over the birth date or a yes, no. It's actually a Boolean response of whether the birth date matches what it needs to be able to get in. And on top of that, you won't get popped with fines for allowing people who are underage into those websites. once a lot of people use those websites, and once they start using them regularly and use an MDL regularly to get into them, then they feel very comfortable. And then after that, they're going to use them in other relying parties as well.
Just briefly, I think this is one of the areas where we've undersold because we're kind of afraid to talk about it. If you think, if I can actually say, yeah, I have an identity proof has proven that I'm over 18 and you know nothing else about me. This is completely anonymous. Like that's a solution to a problem that's out there that that we should be communicating better. It kind of goes to my earlier point, right? About so anyway, I think there's other scenarios like that where the advantages to the end user and the advantages to the relying party can be communicated at the same time.
All right, so before the folks at GSA pulled me off the stage with a stick, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this up and saying thank you to the panelists for your time and the conversation. I would encourage anyone who has questions during the break to please come track them down. They're very knowledgeable. They want to share their insights. Trust me, we could have gone for about 2 hours, but then Darlene will never invite me back. So with that, thank you everyone for the time and for this great conversation.